Okay, I'm here with my guy, Evan Transue. He's a functional diagnostic nutrition coach. He's the owner of Bucks County Light Therapy and Functional Medicine Center. Evan, welcome to the show, brother.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and no worries on the Riverside stuff. I use it too, so we get it. It's nice being on the opposite end for once.
Yeah, I got an editor, so it's all good. Dude, I'm excited to geek out with you. I know you're a functional diagnostic nutrition coach. I had the founder of FDN, the great Reed Davis, on the show. We were talking about blood work and metabolic chaos. But one of the things I find fascinating with you is above everything, above blood work, above gut health, above everything and anything, you are super passionate about light therapy. And from what I understand, you hold that to be like the most crucial thing that everybody should be prioritizing in their health is light. Dude, talk to me about that and how it maybe even affects mental health and all these things that we're going into.
Yeah, and so how I could word it is we put it in the same category to me as food and water. Now, obviously, someone could survive longer in the dark than they could without food or water. So I get that. So in that sense, you could almost even argue it's third. But I put it in that category. I think it matters that much. And so I got into this when I started studying this guy named Jack Kruse. And really, you don't study him. He's just sharing interesting papers. And he combines this stuff together. And he's an interesting character. There's many people that would love him, many people that wouldn't love him. It's not the point. The point is the guy is so far ahead of the time. He was warning about blue light 15 years ago. Everything's dated on his blog. You can see that it's legit. It's nuts because now this would still be something where the average person has no idea that blue light's harming them. They have no idea about stuff like that. And he's already talking about what it's going to do 15 years ago. He's known for kind of predicting what's going to come out in the studies beforehand. So interesting guy. You don't have to love him to take his information seriously. But I got into this unintentionally. It's like many people in the holistic or functional health space. I was dealing with my own health challenges, namely a lot of mental health stuff and some physical stuff too. But when you have these challenges and you go the Western medicine route and you realize, okay, this isn't working, and that's through no fault of their own. I do believe that my doctors had my best intentions. I cannot think of a single doctor that wanted me to feel bad. And I think a lot of people forget this. We can grow very spiteful of the Western medicine people. And then my question to you guys is go to your doctor's office and tell me if they look like they're sitting on the fountain of youth in their back office. Very few of them look like they're doing well. They're working 30 patients a day in an office under those artificial lights, eating crappy food that they got as a to-go. It's one thing if they had the secret and then they were screwing all of us over. I don't think that's how that's working. So we need to open our minds and realize it's bigger than that. And they're not the enemy. They're trying to do the best that they can with the information that they got. And so when you realize that doesn't work, and that was the gold standard, you're like, holy crap, I got to figure this out on my own. First thing I think many people in the holistic health space go to is the food side. Okay, this works. Then you realize there's fluoride in the water in America. Oh my God, all this stuff. Okay. The light thing is fascinating because we realize you can show someone very easily how big of a part of their life this is, but they don't think about it. So for example, when you guys sleep, I'm assuming you like it to be dark. And if it's not dark, it's almost impossible to get good sleep. Maybe you could take a nap for a short amount of time in the middle of the day, outside on the beach. I get that. But if you were trying to get your 8 hours at night, no one would say, okay, I'm going to turn all the overhead lights on. I'm going to make sure the window's open so that I can have these nice big street lamps coming in. No one would do that. And we don't need to teach you that. You didn't need to listen to that on a podcast. Intuitively, all of us understand that that's not going to work. Similarly, if you've ever been camping, you know how effortlessly you kind of wake up in the morning, even if you went to bed super late. Maybe you were hanging out with everyone, having a good time at the fire, but you could have went to bed at 2 or 3, and damn it, man, you're going to be up at 7 or 8, like latest, because the body forces you up in that way. We also know that people who camp for just a week actually reset their circadian rhythm, like almost completely, even if it was super off from what it should be.
Now, and Evan, on that note, are there? That's amazing. I haven't heard that. I went camping and I got some great sleep. But I'm curious that study is there a study published on that? The one that you're highlighting, or was that?
Yeah, make a note for me of anything.
I'll make a note and then
I'll
send it to me,
over.
and we'll throw it in.
Absolutely.
That's really powerful to hear that you're saying a week of camping typically has been shown to reset people's circadian rhythm. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome. And so that's simple. And some people would even downright call it recreational. They want to go do that in the summer. So at least you should do it once a year. I mean, ideally, we do it all the time. We were supposed to live outside. Then what's even more fascinating, and my gosh, I can't send all these over. You can find them yourself as the audience. If you go to PubMed and type in any disease that you could possibly think of, whether it's a cancer, an autoimmune condition, skin health, gut health, type in the disease and then type in night shift afterwards. The amount of studies on individual diseases showing that night shift workers have higher prevalences and worse outcomes of any disease that you can think of. Cardiac stuff, cancers, autoimmune, like I said. It's what was the difference? Do they have different water or food than us? No. And did they even get less sleep? Not necessarily. You could be on night shift and still sleep 8 hours. All we're talking about here is changing that window in which they slept and the light that they did or didn't get. And yet it leads to these outcomes for these people. That's pretty profound, right? Like, that's crazy to think about, that just changing the time that you work and sleep could lead you to having a higher risk of every disease that you can think of.
I love that you said that. As a former first responder, 15 years, and I work with a lot of first responders.
Yeah.
And I worked. I know what it's like to work night shift. The first 2 years as a rookie, I had to work night shifts, and then I got sent back for about 6 months after some things happened, and I had to work night shift, and it wrecks your body. And I always tell guys that I work with and I coach, I'm like, listen, man, the number one thing you need to do is you need to get off this night shift. It's killing you. And they're like, yeah, but it helps the family. I'm like, I know. I get it. I've done that, been there, done that. But at the end of the day, it's killing you slowly, and you don't even realize it. So I love that you highlighted that.
Yeah, and we've created a society where it begs the question, like, how do we solve that? And quite frankly, I don't know. But I do know on the individual level, you can make a personal choice, listener, in your life to do something different. How do we solve the greater problems? I'm not sure, because, I mean, literally, I meant that quite seriously. God bless the people that are first responders doing this, police officers, ER nurses, and doctors. I mean, we could probably afford to close the convenience stores that sell us cheeseburgers at 2 a.m. I think we can all live without that. But those other people, we've almost created a standard in society that you can't imagine that going away. What if grandma has a medical event at 3 a.m.? You want everything to just be closed because people want to sleep? It sounds impractical in that sense. The irony is, if we did it, we'd probably have less medical events. But it's going to be a major shift before that would ever happen, if it ever happens. So the best thing that we can do is start with individuals. And we just need to know you're taking a huge risk doing that. If you're trying to support your family, I totally respect that, man. Just make a plan. Don't make this a thing where, okay, I'm in this and I have no escape. If it's 5 years, you are still better off doing that than someone who did it for 30 years, significantly so. And so it can start with stuff like that. But Joel, I also started diving deep into the sunrise stuff and the blocking the blue light and all these different things. And it really became quite fascinating. So one of the things that we know is if someone is to expose their eyes to early morning sunlight, that will actually help set their circadian rhythm and create melatonin later in the day. There's also something called UVA light. So that's not UVB. UVB would be the stuff that can burn you guys, and that gives you vitamin D. UVA it can tan you, but it can also do something where it helps create this protein. It's a big word. It's a nice Scrabble word if you can ever somehow spell this. It's a 9-syllable. It's propiomelaanocortin, otherwise known as POMC. So in the literature, you could see POMC. That's what this is. And POMC is this protein that light can actually help produce via UVA. And POMC it's almost like too good to be true when you hear it, because POMC can help build serotonin. It can help build beta endorphins. It can help build dopamine. It can help build a lot of these important things that help us feel fantastic. And we know if we strip someone of the natural light, obviously we have seasonal affective disorder. These are all things that you don't even need to understand science to get. We all have seen what happens to people when winter comes. I live in Pennsylvania. We're getting into that season. As soon as September happens, you're like, all right, it's nice. It's still 70 and sunny. October, man, people plummet overnight in how they feel. And then you just kind of bear with it for the next 6-7 months until spring and summer come around again, which is unfortunate that we live that way, but that's just kind of how it is. So that circadian rhythm stuff can be set by getting that morning light. But what we miss...
And Evan, sorry, I just want to go back on that. That's important stuff. UVA, UVB. The UVA you're only getting in the morning hours of the sunlight. Is that how do you differentiate between the UVA, UVB?
Sure. Great question. So UVA is available pretty much any time the sun is up. UVB, by the way, it doesn't matter if you're an atheist, spiritual person, religious, whatever happened, whether it was an accident or creator, is so beautifully precise. It's amazing to look into. So UVB light, which remember can burn the hell out of you if you're out in it for too long. So just changing this a little bit would mean we can't exist as humans. UVB light will only penetrate the atmosphere in meaningful amounts when the sun goes 30 degrees over the horizon. That's how precise it is. The thing that could literally just fry us to death. 30 degrees over the horizon is just when it starts to be meaningful. So UVA, though, will actually penetrate the atmosphere pretty much anytime the sun's up. That same is also true with red light. So people use red light therapy. The sun was the original red light therapy and still is. It's free. You just walk out into it. The sun also has infrared light, near infrared light. And that's going to get through the atmosphere pretty much at any time. Anytime you're actually exposed to the sun, you're looking at least 42% red and near infrared light. So that UVA is always going to be present. Now, of course, it's in different strengths because anyone that's been out in sun in the winter would say, oh, I didn't get very tan. Well, of course, yes, it's not as strong as if it's over the horizon 60 degrees in the middle of a summer day. Much stronger UV light then, just like there'd be stronger UVB. But yeah, that's available all the time. And so you get a bunch of benefits by going out in the morning, but one of those things is that's how you're creating these happy hormones. When people say, oh, the sun makes me feel better, that's one of the main mechanisms that we know of as of now. We're sure there's more. Light's incredibly complicated. The human body's incredibly complicated. But we know right now that that's leading to a lot of the feel-good things that people are taking narcotics for, that people are taking SSRIs for. We are drugging ourselves up every day to go work in an office or at home when nature gave us that for free. And we all know it intuitively because we feel great when we're out there.
Yeah, great stuff. And, Jack Kruse, by the way, is amazing. If anybody, I was just doing a podcast the other day. We were talking about Jack Kruse briefly.
Nice.
If anybody wants to hear him run a clinic on Andrew Huberman, he made him, and he didn't intentionally do this, but if you want to hear Rick Rubin, the Tetragramma, I think, podcast, it's a 4-hour podcast. It's broken up into, I think, 2 episodes, 2 hours each. And he runs a clinic on, everyone thinks Andrew Huberman is like the greatest doctor in the world. So if you want to hear him run a clinic on Andrew Huberman, you can hear that. And everything you're talking about is great. The POMC, and it really made me realize after listening to that episode, who I follow, Jack Kruse, is just how much we are missing as I think as a society, and looking for the next supplement and the next this and the next that, and a lot of it is just so available to us in nature, and we're just missing it, man. And I love that you're bringing some light to this subject because it's so valuable and so important. Do you really think, though, and do you really think that if people change their light, right? If they start if they start prioritizing light. Let's say I'm depressed, I have anxiety, these issues that happen with neurotransmitters. Do you think that if I just start prioritizing light?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you for a second.
Yeah, no worries. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I heard if people really change their light, do you blanked out after that?
So do you really think that if people prioritize light, circadian rhythm, red light, getting sun in the eyes, getting sun to hit their skin, dark lights at night, do you really think, or do you see anecdotally in your practice that people are getting better, whether it's anxiety, depression, all these things that cannot be cured? Because then there's a lot also that, some would say, well, Evan, what about the gut? What about gut health, gut-brain axis? Maybe it's a gut issue. I'm just curious to see in your own practice or from what you've seen, if people just start prioritizing light in their life, man, all these other things start to get better.
Yep. And so, again, this one I definitely can send over too. Because it's not that these things don't matter. We're right on the mark with a lot of natural and functional medicine. The gut does matter. What people don't realize is that light therapy, particularly the red light stuff, and near infrared, namely, can penetrate deep enough that it affects the gut microbiome. There was a fascinating study done that showed that we gave this, it was a tribe, basically. I think it was in South America. And we gave them like candy bars every day to eat. So they're eating their normal stuff, but they're also eating these candy bars. And what we were measuring is the microbiome changes in a group that we did that to versus standard Americans. So Americans eat crappy, but not every American's eating a candy bar every day. So what we found is when we did that with the normal people, civilized people, their microbiome did change in the time period. When we gave it to the people who lived outdoors and did this stuff, it didn't affect anything. Now, it didn't change their microbiome. They handled it. Now, correlation is not causation. You could say there's a million different you could say they ground every day. Maybe that's why it did it, Ev. The reason I'm mentioning that study in relevance to this, or in relation to this, is because we actually do know that light can penetrate the skin and directly affect the gut microbiome. So you'll have these people that come into, and I listen, the sun's first. If you can get the sun, do that first. If you have the ability to move south, do that, or north, depending on where you're at, do that first. But if you are trying everything that you can, maybe you're the first responder, and you say, I have my plan out of this, but right now this is how I pay the bills, I got a family. That's when red light therapy and things like that can be useful. And this is coming from someone who owns a business that does this. We tell every client this. You got to prioritize this stuff first. We go through their life with them. If you really can't figure out this, then this is a supplement. It's basically a light supplement. That red light therapy, we do know, can actually affect the gut microbiome in a positive way. So your original question was, can this stuff actually help all these things? A lot of these pieces that we've put together in functional medicine and natural medicine are directly impacted by light. So it's not that the gut doesn't matter. It does. It's that light can help that. Then you say, well, what about all the other bodily systems? We got the brain, we got the liver, we got kidneys, whatever. Okay, well, an overly simplified case for that would be, just like when we said someone does night shift, it raises the risk of all disease, it would be logical to assume then that the more optimized one's circadian rhythm is, the better their outcomes are going to be for all that stuff. And we actually know that. I mean, that's true. That's a factual statement. So the question more or less is, you can't even guess how healthy you can be until you live outside. Now, don't worry, I'm not that extreme. I'm not advocating for people to go start a community and live in a tent the rest of their life. But the question is, how much does it help? It's like, well, it scales it seemingly infinitely until you get to that point where you're actually living in nature. This is anecdotal, I get that. I did a camping experiment in the beginning of the pandemic because I'd been studying light for years. I figured, when the hell else in my adult life am I going to get to do this until retirement? So I moved back to my parents for the oddest reason in the world. It's because they have 3 acres. And I camped outside. My dad, that man loves me to death, but this one confused the hell out of him. My mom's all for my hippie crap. So I lived outside more or less for 60 days straight. I missed 7 nights because of lightning storms, so wasn't going to be a hero. And I did work inside. I had to work on the computer, but I had the window open constantly. I spent usually 2 to 3 hours minimum in the morning sun every day. I tanned every day. I did all the stuff I had to do. Joel, what was amazing is I started testing dietary stuff that today, if I ate, I've had acne in the past, would break me out, would make me feel down, slow, fatigued. I was eating what you could almost call crap. I felt the strongest I ever had. I was going to the gym, and what would normally be a 2 or 3 day soreness period, I'm ready to go the next day. It was like I was literally ready to go. I leaned out. I wasn't a bodybuilder, but I looked good. The skin was the best it's ever been. I have pictures from that. It's like, I look even better than I'm right now. And I mean, that's saying much, right? I'm not a 10 out of 10, that's for sure, for those listening on audio. But it's just crazy to think that I'm still doing my health stuff. I still do what I can, but I'm back in my home office and things like that. Nothing can compare to doing that 60-day camping experiment. And that was 60 days when most human beings were designed, well, all human beings were designed to do that from the day we were born until the day that we died. So my answer is absolutely. I think it really can be that great. It's incredible. I don't think we have any idea how good it can be yet.
I love that. Okay, I'm a first responder still. I come to you. I'm still a shift worker. I'm like, Ev, I'm not healthy, or I want to optimize, but like I'm telling you, I'm not giving up shift work. What do I do? What do I do to optimize? What do you tell me? What's the prescription?
Yeah, so the analogy that we can use, Joel, is when you have when the light stuff is making your body work well, almost picture you have the best car in the world, right? The car's looking great, the engine's solid, whatever, but maybe you were eating crap, so you're putting bad fuel in. Now we have the opposite problem. We're breaking down the car. And so what we want to do then is everything we can to give it that 93 octane fuel. We want the best stuff. So one, and you can see this, you really can't cheat on the diet as much. 2, there might be, this is a little bit dependent on the person, there might be a benefit of doing more, like getting in to ketosis more often than maybe the average person would be required to, because I do believe that all of us should be getting into it off and on, but you might find that you feel a lot better and do a lot better being in that more. And this all comes down to the fuel thing, right? We're just trying to optimize everything else because we're missing the worst part. We're aging the car faster. We can't fake that part. So we got to put better stuff in so that we're not contributing to that fire, basically. I would also be supplementing with some type of red light therapy panel just to get it in. The body does need that. And then if you're on shift work, I know this won't be possible every single day, but any day that you can see that sunrise, even if you're about to go to bed afterwards, there are benefits to that. It can help you out.
So that was a question I had. I get off at 7 in the morning. That's a typical shift. 9 o'clock to 7 a.m. I get off at 7. Coming home, I just want to go straight to bed. But the sun is just usually starting to rise, and depends where you're at, what time of the year it is. So, yeah, would you recommend, hey, just stay up for 5 more minutes and get that early morning sunrise, then go to bed? Because I'm thinking that sunrise is actually going to tell me to stay awake. What do you think?
I think you'd probably be shot at that point. Maybe it makes you last an extra hour or two. I think you're still going to.
I will say this: I had to drive about an hour home from my shift, and I would this is back in the day, and I could drink a cup of coffee, and sometimes I would just get it just to like mentally make me feel like I was awake. But I could drink a cup of coffee, and as soon as I got home, I would hit the bed and I'd just fall asleep. So, like you said, I was drained. Sunlight it didn't matter. I was just exhausted.
Yeah, so I would say just try to do it, especially when, I mean, you have a plan, right? So if you can get out of this one day, you're going to be better off than the person who wasn't doing this the entire time. That's for sure. I have a friend, Ariel. She lives down in Philadelphia. I'm like 45 minutes northeast. And she's very into this stuff, but she got into it after studying in school as a nurse, getting a job as a nurse that does night shift 3 nights a week. So again, we can't all uproot our lives overnight. No pun intended, lame pun. I get that. But what she does, and she posts this all the time. She's out there every day on her damn Instagram story. She just got off her shift. She's walking home, takes the glasses off, right? No sunglasses or anything like that, is getting that sun. And then, within an hour, she's asleep, which ideal, no, but you're still, man, I would love we're not going to get this anytime soon. I would love the studies that show the night shift workers that do that every morning, even just for 30 minutes, versus the night shift workers that don't ever do that, and what the outcome or difference in outcomes are for all these disease states that we already know are more prevalent in these people.
That's a great study. If I go back, I'll try to make that happen. You and I will collaborate, and we'll make
Awesome.
That happen. That'll be fun. Hey, I know we're going to wrap things up, but this is going to be a little bit short of an episode. But tell me, I'm kind of curious your thoughts on vitamin D supplementation. How do you feel about that nowadays? I've gone back and forth, and I know that supplementation, I see it work for clients, and it helps out. But I've kind of backed off of the 5,000 IUs, and I understand what it does, but I've really backed off of that myself personally, and just been prioritizing sunlight as much as possible. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
So there's what I can prove and what I think. So let's always keep that separate, right?
I love
what
that.
I can prove
and do both. Let's talk both. Yeah.
Sure. What I can prove is that it must be different to some degree, because if I take 10,000 IU of vitamin D orally versus getting 10,000 IU of vitamin D every day, I could do this every day from the sun. And if I do the former and I don't take vitamin K2 with it, I'm putting myself at risk for hypercalcemia. If I do that with the sun and I don't take vitamin K, that's not necessarily smart, but I'm never going to get hypercalcemia. That cannot happen. And so that what I mean by what I can prove versus what I think is we can prove that. Now, does that matter? Is that a big deal? I don't know. But what I do know is that in nature, if you look at the foods, we would never get the amount of vitamin D that we need from food. Even the best quality, nowhere close. You're lucky with high quality food to be getting 1,000 to 1,500 IU a day of vitamin D. That's extreme. But the sun, man, if we could be out there for 10 minutes, and I can go out after this, and I probably will, for 10, 15 minutes, and someone like me can get 10 to 15,000 IU if I flip sides and have most of my body exposed, maybe minus shorts. And so the fact that I can do that easily implies to me that I was supposed to get a lot of this stuff. And I think that there are many things that go into that process of the skin using UVB to create vitamin D in our body. I mean, we know it is going to lower the cholesterol as well because it has to use the cholesterol to create these steroidal hormones. So I think there's many factors there. I will put it this way, even in the winter here, I actually use the Spurdy vitamin D lamps. I don't supplement vitamin D. I would rather have, this is my opinion, it's not medical advice, different for everyone. I would rather have that Spurdy vitamin D lamp be the thing that's producing the
now,
vitamin
Ev,
D for
on
me.
that note, that little vitamin D, it's a small lamp.
Yes, it is.
It's very tiny.
Yep.
And I don't know. Have you checked your? I've always debated whether I should go and get one of those. And during the wintertime, like you said, I'm here in Idaho, but I guess my thought is it's this tiny little lamp, and it's is it $400 or something? I forget what it is, but it's just a tiny lamp. I'm like, whereas behind me I have this giant red light panel, like it still does my whole body. That to me makes sense. Can this tiny lamp that is like maybe your face? Is that enough to actually trigger the vitamin D levels to get it up? It doesn't seem like enough, but what are your thoughts?
Actually, what's cool is if you go to Spurdy's website, they've been around for a while, so they have the data behind this. But UVB, like, I'm not saying do this, but if you wanted to test that it's very powerful, because you're tan, right? But you're like me, obviously we're white. Go leave that on for 15 minutes. You're not going to be feeling so good afterwards. That's going to burn the hell out of you.
Even though it's a tiny one, or do they have full body panels now? I don't know.
Listen, the full body aspect. I mean, you have that's a unique thought, right? Because the more of your body that you got, the more that you could get. But believe it or not, since it is concentrated UVB light, that's the only thing that's coming from that. Where think about when we're talking about the sun, when it pops over that 30-degree mark, a small percentage is UVB light versus those lamps are 100%. Like that's all it is. So you're able to get like 10,000 IU in a 5-minute treatment, if I'm not mistaken. That's what their data shows.
Perfect.
Now, little trick, what I do, because you don't want to burn and you want as much as possible, I do the front first around my stomach, and then I switch to the back and I do my lower back and mid back. So I actually do get 2 sessions technically, but I don't want to burn one spot. Obviously, that's not good. That's a stupid idea.
And so have you tested vitamin D levels during the winter when you're doing that and seeing what the levels are?
Oh yeah. No, that's anything it goes too high. Yeah.
Yeah. What are your levels typically?
I can sit around 80 pretty easily.
Wow. And then you're using that Spectra vitamin D lamp.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Okay, really cool. I think that's powerful. People need to know that.
Yeah. Joel, I know we're trying to keep it short, but it's just a nerdy study if I can share it because I think it's so damn cool.
I know you got to run in a few minutes, but I got time. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll keep it short because this just shows you how long this has been around. And then, a lot of people in the health space are under the belief that some of the science that comes out in the nutrition space and in water as well, it's out there, but it's not like we prioritize this because there's big companies that I don't think they're trying to hide it per se. I think that maybe is a little extreme, but they're not going to prioritize it and publicize it because it doesn't make them money. In 1973, Environmental Health and Light Research Institute, Dr. John Ott, this guy lived to 90, by the way, and this was back then. And so he ran a study on 4 windowless classrooms in Sarasota, Florida. Now, my first question is, why the hell are there windowless classrooms in Sarasota, Florida, man? It's Florida. Like, let's open up the damn light. Besides the point. So all of the classrooms had behavioral issues, and he was like the pioneer of the light stuff. Dr. Jack Kruse references him all the time for his stuff that he did. So Dr. John Ott put fluorescent he kept the white fluorescents in 2 of the rooms, so he didn't change anything. And then 2 of the classrooms got full spectrum bulbs. Now, full spectrum, for those that might be learning about this for the first time, that does not mean it's anywhere near the sun. We're not even close to being able to replicate that. But full spectrum means we're at least trying. We're doing the best that we can in artificial light. The letter grades went up in the classroom that got the full spectrum light. The behavioral issues were non-existent in one of the classrooms after 1 month of this. So what we would call like ADHD and ADD today basically went away. And then the most fascinating part of that study, because the behavioral stuff is like, it's cool, but you're like, oh, well, maybe it was just a good month. Here's what you can't fake. Other doctors in the community got involved with this, namely dentists. So dentists started studying this, and they went for 3 months. The children that were in the full spectrum lights for 3 months had 1/3 the amount of cavities of the kids that were in the white fluorescents. What does that even mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, we look at that as like, oh, they're eating Hershey bars and drinking Coca-Cola. It must be the sugar. We didn't say dietary changes. We said we changed the light that this kid sat under while they were at school. Didn't change their home environment. Didn't change what they were doing at night. Just that. And they had 1/3 the cavities. So am I saying I know exactly what that means even 50 years later? I'm not. But I always, in these light conversations, that's one of my favorite ones to get out because I think that I hope it does this for the audience. That blows my mind every time I hear or say that one. It's like, what did it do? We have no idea what light can do to the body. So we kind of started on that and we'll end on that. We have no idea what this can do yet. We are just discovering it.
Amazing, man. I want to wrap things up, and you can let people know where to find you and connect with you. Before I do, I'm curious, what are your rituals, or like what's a habit? What are your habits? Like what are like the daily hacks or practices that you do on a regular basis?
I keep my regular ones very simple. And I don't mean to be giving a lame answer, but I also want to be honest. I find that I get overwhelmed if I try to stick to like a 40-minute morning habit and then I can't keep it. So I am passionate. That's my luckiest thing. I want to go do the things I need to do, but the habits that I do have, because I eat well and stuff like that, I always wake up. I always get outside first every day. That's not an exception. Every day I get outside first and I get that morning light in my eyes. No glasses, no contacts, no anything. Get that. I don't care if it is 20 degrees outside, which it does get in Pennsylvania sometimes. Put on a jacket. That's why we created those things. They're really useful. You put on some gloves and I go stare at that. The other thing that I do that could be considered a habit, but again, I just do it naturally. I don't even think about it because I know it works, is I have not missed a beat in the last 6-7 years of blocking blue light at night. So I have those blue light blocking glasses. I have the red tinted ones. I use blue blocks. My next pair is going to be RA Optics because I think they're actually probably doing some things better. And I like the kid. He's very interesting. He's a young guy that makes some super well versed guy, and he's like a Jack Cruz protege. So very interesting there. I filters my screens at night. I use the light behind me right now for podcasts only. That light is never on outside of this. And then the rest of my stuff is the windows. Like I use window light and then a filtered screen on my computer. So my habit per se is minimizing that as much as possible. Yes, I do the cold plunge. Yes, I lift weights. I do all those things. But again, man, I just do that because I'm passionate. I don't think like, I have to go do this today. The habits that I do that sometimes I'm a little resistant to in a perfect world would be, yes, I force myself out of bed to get out every morning. I put those stupid glasses on and I filter the screen. And man, I am way better off for doing that.
That's amazing. Evan Transue, tell everybody where they can connect with you, find out about what you're doing and what you're up to, your social media, all that kind of good stuff.
Cool. So my personal stuff, we do work with people all over the world, even though it's a local business. It's buckscountylighttherapy.com. So you can check us out there. You can just learn some stuff too. We post some cool stuff on there, I like to believe. And then the company I'm here today representing is something called Functional Diagnostic Nutrition, kind of a mouthful. So it's functionaldiagnosticnutrition.com. I do some sales for them. I do some speaking for them, obviously. And then I do the podcast for them as well. So I always say podcasts are like, TV shows. You don't have just one favorite. So it's not that you go trade ours and then stop listening to Joel. Like, get them for different reasons. We interview people who have been through very severe chronic health issues, and it's mostly inspirational. There's a lot of education, but it's half of it's inspirational every single time. So just a different TV show. That's how you can look at it. So if you like that kind of stuff, that's what we do. It's called the Health Detective Podcast by FDN. But yeah, that's where they can find us. And if you wanted to reach out, I guess, to someone at FDN, really simple. Go to the Instagram at FDN Training, and we have real people that answer you.
Amazing. Evan Transue, thanks for being on the show, brother. I appreciate you so much.
Yeah, thank you, man.